On the distant planet of Zarnok, the sky was a deep purple, and two suns shone brightly. Kale, a soldier of the Zarnokian army, was on a mission with his team. They were exploring an ancient ruin rumored to hold valuable resources. The air was filled with excitement, but Kyle also felt a knot of tension in his stomach. Something didn't feel right. As they moved deeper into the ruins, the atmosphere changed. The sounds of their footsteps echoed eerily off the stone walls. Kale glanced around, his sharp instincts warning him that they were not alone. The team leader, Commander Varn, ordered everyone to stay alert. "Keep your eyes open. We don't know what might be lurking here," he said, his voice steady. Suddenly, a loud explosion shattered the silence. Rocks and dust flew into the air, and the team stumbled back in shock. "Ambush!" someone shouted. Kale's heart raced as he grabbed his weapon, ready to fight. A group of hostile aliens emerged from the shadows, their faces twisted in malicious grins. They were the Kralon, a fierce enemy known for their ruthless attacks. Kale and his teammates quickly formed a defensive line. The Kralon charged forward, their weapons blazing. Kale fired his blaster, hitting one of the attackers, but there were too many. The Kralon moved like a swarm, closing in on the Zarnokians. Kale felt panic rising as he realized their situation was dire. "Fall back!" Commander Varn ordered, but it was too late. The enemy surrounded them, cutting off any chance of escape. Kale could see his comrades fighting bravely, but one by one, they were being taken down. He fought with everything he had, but he was soon outnumbered. The sounds of battle filled the air, blasts of energy, shouts of pain, and the thud of bodies hitting the ground. Kyle tried to reach for his communicator, but it was damaged in the chaos. "We need help," he thought desperately. His heart sank as he realized they were isolated, cut off from reinforcements. The Kralon laughed, their eyes glinting with victory as they advanced. Kale felt a cold sweat trickle down his back. As the battle raged on, Kyle fought fiercely, determined to protect his squad. He spotted his friend Jara fighting nearby, her face set with determination. "We can't give up!" she shouted, firing her weapon at a Kralon soldier. Kale nodded, pushing himself to fight harder. But with every passing moment, their chances of survival dwindled. Just when it seemed all hope was lost, a bright flash lit up the sky. Kale squinted against the light, confused. What was happening? The Kralon paused, their laughter fading as they looked up. A massive spaceship, unlike anything Kale had seen, descended from the clouds. It glowed with an otherworldly light, and its sleek design was awe-inspiring. "Who are they?" Kale wondered, hope flickering in his heart. Was this a rescue, or was it another enemy? As the ship landed, a door opened and figures emerged. They were humans, strange beings with pale skin and hair that shone like sunlight. Kale's jaw dropped. He had heard stories of humans but never seen one in person. The humans moved quickly, organizing themselves into a tight formation. They had advanced weapons and technology that dazzled Kale. "Are they here to help us?" he thought, feeling a surge of hope mixed with disbelief. The humans began to fight, moving with a confidence that amazed Kyle. They shouted commands and worked together seamlessly. Kyle watched in awe as they pushed back the Kralon, taking control of the battlefield. For the first time since the ambush, he felt a spark of hope. Kale realized that help had arrived. The humans were here to rescue them. With renewed determination, he joined the fight alongside his unexpected allies, ready to turn the tide of battle. The bright light from the descending spaceship cast long shadows over the battlefield. Kale stood frozen for a moment, his heart racing as he watched the humans leap into action. Their arrival felt like a dream. Could these strangers really save them from the Kralon? As the humans landed, they moved with a confidence that Kale found inspiring. The leader of the group, a tall woman with short dark hair, quickly assessed the situation. "Form a line!" she shouted, her voice strong and clear. The humans responded instantly, organizing themselves into an effective formation, ready to take on the enemy. Kale felt a rush of excitement and fear. He had never seen such teamwork. The humans didn't hesitate. They immediately began firing at the Kralon, their weapons unleashing bright bursts of energy. The Kralon, caught off guard, staggered back. Kale watched as the humans worked together, communicating with ease. It was clear they were trained for this. "Follow their lead!" Commander Varn yelled, rallying the Zarnokian soldiers. Kale, still in awe, took a deep breath and joined his comrades. "Follow their lead!" Commander Varn yelled, rallying the Zarnakian soldiers. Kale, still in awe, took a deep breath and joined his comrades. With the humans providing cover, he felt emboldened. Together, they pushed forward, fighting back against the Kralon. The sound of blaster fire filled the air, and Kale could feel the tide of battle shifting. The humans moved like a well-oiled machine, dodging enemy fire and returning shots with deadly precision. Kyle marveled at their agility and strength. They were not just soldiers, they were warriors. "Watch out!" Yara shouted, pulling Kale back just in time as a Kralon soldier charged at him. Kale quickly turned and fired, hitting the enemy square in the chest. He glanced at Yara, a smile breaking across his face. "We can do this!" As the battle continued, the human leader, who Kale learned was named Captain Ellis, spoke into a small device. "We need to flank them from the left," she commanded. The humans moved in unison, executing her plan flawlessly. Kale and his squad followed, impressed by the humans' strategic thinking. With renewed energy, Kale and his comrades attacked from the right, catching the Kralon by surprise. The enemy began to falter, their numbers dwindling as they struggled to keep up with the relentless assault from both sides. Kale felt a surge of hope. They might actually win. Suddenly, a loud explosion erupted nearby, sending rocks flying into the air. Kale ducked instinctively, but when he looked up, he saw a human soldier, the one with bright red hair, taking aim at a group of Kralon preparing to launch a counterattack. With a single shot, the soldier took them down, his face set in determination. "Nice shot!" Kale shouted, his admiration growing for these new allies. The human turned and smiled, giving Kale a thumbs up before returning to the fight. As the battle raged on, Kale noticed how the humans fought not just for themselves, but for each other. They covered each other's backs, offering words of encouragement and support. It was a bond Kale had never witnessed before. He felt a sense of camaraderie growing between them, even though they had just met. After what felt like hours, the Kralon began to retreat, realizing they were losing. The remaining enemies turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows of the ruins. Kale let out a cheer, his heart pounding with exhilaration. They had done it. The humans had come to their rescue, and together, they had won the day. As the dust began to settle, Captain Ellis approached Kale and Commander Varn. "You fought well," she said, her eyes sparkling with pride. "We couldn't have done it without you." Kale felt a warmth spread through him at her words. "Thank you for coming," he replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "We were in desperate need of help." The humans smiled, and for the first time, Kyle truly felt the strength of their alliance. They were no longer just two different species. They were partners in battle, united against a common enemy. As Kale looked around at his fellow soldiers, he knew this was just the beginning of a new friendship that would change everything. The battlefield was still buzzing with energy after the Kralon's retreat. Kale and the other soldiers took a moment to catch their breath, but they knew the danger was not over. The Kralon could regroup and return at any time. Captain Ellis glanced at her team, her expression serious. "We need to secure this area," she said firmly. "They might come back, and we can't let them catch us off guard." Kale felt a surge of adrenaline. He was no longer just a Zarnakian soldier. He was part of a larger team now, fighting alongside the humans. He quickly moved to gather with the others, eager to do his part. The sun beat down on them, but the atmosphere was electric with determination. "Let's set up a perimeter," Commander Varn instructed. The Zarnakians and humans began to work together, creating a defensive line around the ruins. Kale joined a group of humans led by the soldier with bright red hair, whose name he learned was Jake. As they fortified their position, Kale marveled at the humans' efficiency. They moved quickly, sharing ideas and using their advanced technology to set traps and barriers. "This is how you prepare for a fight," Kale thought, impressed by their skills. Suddenly, a loud explosion echoed from the direction the Kralon had fled. "They're coming back!" someone shouted. Kale's heart raced. He grabbed his blaster, ready to defend their newfound alliance. Captain Ellis shouted commands, organizing her team with calm authority. "Form up! Hold the line!" she called out. The humans and Zarnakians quickly took their positions, bracing themselves for the incoming attack. Moments later, the Kralon charged back, more determined than before. Their numbers were larger this time, and they advanced with a fierce battle cry. Kale felt a chill run down his spine, but he steadied his breathing, focusing on the task at hand. As the first Krylon soldiers reached the defensive line, the combined forces of humans and Zarnakians opened fire. Bright blasts of energy lit up the battlefield, and the air was filled with the sounds of gunfire and the shouts of soldiers. Kale fought hard, firing at the oncoming enemies and taking down Krylon soldiers one by one. "Keep pushing! Don't let them break through!" Jake shouted beside him. Kyle nodded, adrenaline fueling his movements. He was surprised by how well he worked alongside the humans, their strategies blending seamlessly with his instincts. The Krylon fought fiercely and the battle intensified. Kale saw one of his fellow Zarnakians fall and his heart sank. Anger surged within him. "We can't lose anyone else," he thought, gritting his teeth as he aimed his weapon. He pushed forward, determined to protect his comrades. The humans fought with a unique flair. Kale noticed how they supported each other, shouting encouragement and sharing cover. Their teamwork inspired him, and he began to mirror their tactics, coordinating with Jara and Jake to create openings in the enemy lines. As the battle raged on, Kale felt the weight of the moment. This was not just a fight for survival, it was a test of their alliance. If they lost now, everything they had worked for would be in vain. Suddenly, the Krylon launched a surprise attack from the left, catching some of the human soldiers off guard. "To the left! They're flanking us!" Captain Ellis yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. Kale quickly turned to help defend that side, his heart pounding. He and Jara moved together, firing at the approaching Krylon. The enemy soldiers advanced, but Kale felt a fierce determination to protect his newfound friends. "We can't let them through!" he shouted, firing with all his strength. Just when it seemed the Krylon might break their line, the humans unleashed a powerful weapon. A flash of light erupted, creating a wave that knocked back the enemy. Kale shielded his eyes, amazed at the humans' ingenuity. With renewed energy, the Allied forces pushed forward. Kale charged alongside Jara and Jake, determined to turn the tide. They fought with everything they had, and slowly but surely, the Krylon began to retreat once more. As the last of the Krylon fled into the distance, Kale couldn't believe what they had achieved. They had survived together. Exhausted but triumphant, he exchanged grateful glances with his allies. The bond between the Zarnakians and humans had grown stronger in the heat of battle, and Kale knew this was just the beginning of their journey together. The battle had finally ended, and the dust began to settle over the battlefield. Kale stood panting, his heart still racing from the fight. Around him, soldiers tended to the wounded and checked for any lingering threats. The air was filled with a mix of exhaustion and relief, and Kale felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. He spotted Captain Ellis talking to Commander Varn. They were discussing their next steps, but Kale couldn't help but listen in. "We need to regroup and share what we've learned," Captain Ellis said, her brow furrowed in thought. "We've fought well together, but we need to know more about each other." Kale felt a spark of excitement. They had fought side by side, but now it was time to build a true alliance. He wanted to know more about the humans, their culture, their stories, and what made them tick. After the immediate tasks were done, Kale approached Captain Ellis. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice a mix of nervousness and eagerness. She looked up, her expression warm and welcoming. "Of course, Kale. We owe each other that much after today," she replied, motioning for him to sit down. They found a quiet spot near the ruins, where the sounds of recovery faded into the background. "I've always heard stories about humans," Kale began, trying to break the ice. "I didn't think I would ever meet any in person." He watched as Captain Ellis smiled. "Same here," she replied. "I've heard about Zarnakians, too. Brave soldiers known for their resilience. You proved that today." Kale felt a swell of pride. "Thank you, but I have to say, I'm amazed by your teamwork. You fight like you've known each other for years." Ellis nodded, her expression serious. "We train together every day. We learn to trust one another. It's the only way to survive in battles like this." "Great idea," Commander Varn replied, a smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "Let's gather a team and set out at first light." Soon they assembled a group of soldiers from both sides. Kale felt proud as he stood alongside humans and Zarnakians united in their goal. As they set off, the energy was electric. They moved swiftly through the dense forest, working together to keep an eye out for any signs of danger. While scouting, Kale and Jake found themselves walking side by side. "You know, Kale," Jake began, "I've never had friends from another planet before. This feels special." Kale agreed, his heart swelling with pride. "I feel the same. We're stronger together. I never imagined I'd find such allies in a fight." As they ventured deeper into the woods, they stumbled upon a small clearing. It was peaceful, with birds singing and sunlight filtering through the trees. Kale stopped to take it in, feeling a sense of hope for the future. "This could be a perfect place for a base," he said, turning to the others. "We can build something here to strengthen our alliance." Captain Ellis nodded thoughtfully. "I like that idea. If we can establish a safe haven, we can train together, share knowledge, and prepare for any future threats." The group quickly agreed, their spirits lifted by the vision of a joint base. They began brainstorming ideas for what it could look like: training grounds, living quarters, and areas for sharing their cultures. The excitement was palpable, and Kale felt a sense of belonging he had never known before. As the day went on, they returned to their camp, ready to share their findings. Kale couldn't wait to present the idea of the base to everyone. That evening, they gathered around the fire, sharing food and stories under the stars. Kale felt a warmth in his chest as he watched his friends laughing and talking. This was more than just survival. It was the beginning of a new era. "Everyone, can I have your attention?" Kale called out, standing to address the group. "Jake and I found a perfect spot for a base today. We can build a place where we can train together and prepare for anything that comes our way." Excited murmurs rippled through the crowd. Captain Ellis stood beside him, her face shining with enthusiasm. "This is an excellent idea. A place where we can grow stronger together. We can share our knowledge, strategies, and cultures." The soldiers cheered, their voices ringing with hope. They began discussing plans for the base, sharing ideas about how to make it a safe and welcoming place. Kale felt a sense of pride in being part of this moment, where their futures intertwined. As the night wore on, Kale reflected on how far they had come. Just days ago, they were strangers fighting for survival. Now, they were allies, friends, and partners in building a brighter future. The journey ahead would not be easy, but together, they could overcome any challenge. In the weeks that followed, the base began to take shape. Soldiers from both sides worked side by side, laying the foundations for their new home. Kale felt a sense of purpose in every brick laid, every plan made. They were not just building a base, they were building a future where humans and Zarnakians could thrive together. As he looked around at his friends, Kyle knew this was just the beginning. With determination, trust, and friendship, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would ensure that their alliance would last for generations to come, creating a legacy of unity and strength in a galaxy full of uncertainty. The stars above twinkled brightly, as if celebrating their new beginning, and Kale couldn't help but smile.